Nasema hawaitaki na hata hawajui nini iko ndani. Sasa hiyo jameni, tunasomesha watu ndio wasome. This is an opportunity to engage in meaningful and peaceful discourse. We don't want to divide the country. Only a fool will say that there are no issues in this country that do not require addressing.
Mtu asituambie ya kwamba maoni yenu hatutaki na nyinyi mutafagiliwa sijui na tsunami. Hiyo siasa ya tsunami, my friends, msituletee. Sisi ni watu wangwana na sisi ni watu ambao tunaamini demokrasia. Tsunami mupeleke kwingine.
Mutaletewa itakuwa na makaratasi, mutaletewa paka kibra, kama haina manufaa kwa mwananchi wa kawaida, hiyo BBI hata bunge haitapita.
But if that BBI has nothing to do with our tea, if it has nothing to do with our milk, if it has nothing to do with our tea, it is not being an equitable sharing of resources. It's saying that MP should go and elect a prime minister. We will throw it out in the morning.
BBI ikija, mimi ningemuomba watu wangu wa Kakamega tuitikie kura, tuseme yes.
We want to have a situation in this country where everybody feels part and parcel of government. Everybody feels represented in government.
Hatuwezi kuvunja ile bridge ya samani and taking the materials of the old bridge to build a new bridge. We can't do that. We can't do this as a country.
So ile kitu wangefanya, wangekuja kutuuliza sisi wananchi. Sio watu wachache washikane waende kwa mahoteli kubwa kubwa, watengeneze kitu inaitwa BBI, alafu wanatuambia watatuletea, na hiyo lazima tuchukue.
We are going to engage in the conversation around the presentations that were made so that we can have an informed, national, democratic conversation in our republic on our present and our future.
All right, so those are several leaders diving into that conversation about the very much anticipated report. We understand that the BBI task force will be presenting it to the president tomorrow, and we hear of stories of leaders being invited to a forum on Wednesday. Senator, have you been invited?
Yes, I have.
What time does it begin?
Well, remember there are two functions, one on Tuesday, to the best of my knowledge, is beginning at about 10. Then we have another one on Wednesday, which is also commencing at about 9 a.m. in the morning, Bomas of Kenya.
Bomas of Kenya.
Yeah, so for me, I'm attending the one of Bomas. I think the one on tomorrow's one. It's mere presentation of our document.
Okay.
But the official unveiling of the document to the public will be done on Wednesday at Bomas of Kenya.
And Mheshimiwa Nyonyi, have you received your invitation?
At least as of now, I've not seen it.
You haven't seen it?
Maybe it will come, I don't know.
Honorable Gachagua?
No, I've heard about it from my colleagues, but I've not been invited so far.
Okay. Do you think you'll be invited?
I don't know. You know, there's preoccupation of county commission. I don't understand it, because it's we used to have our own communication through the Jubilee Party leadership, through the leader of majority. This preoccupation of county commission, I don't understand it. Probably our county commissioner will invite us at last minute.
Okay.
Because people also think we have nothing to do. The colleagues from Murang'a have been invited, from Kiambu have been invited. I am not sure, because probably it's our county commissioner. He thinks he'll send us a text message maybe the last day.
Okay.
We just turn up, because there's nothing else we are doing. We need to be given adequate notice. Now he can plan his day. If he's already been invited now, he's able to plan his week. But we are waiting. And if we are invited,
okay,
we'll be there.
That's pretty interesting. And Senator Kangata, of course, you see the division that this conversation has brought. You even hear now that the Member of Parliament for Uasin Gishu, Gladys Boshole, is saying that they should have been called wangekuja kutuuliza sisi wananchi. So it's less than their eyes around 24 hours to the release of that report, the submission to the president, but we still divided on whether this should have happened or not. How do we carry forward now that you'll be attending that forum on Wednesday for the unveiling?
For me, there are reasons why I'm inclined to support the entire BBI process. I do not know the contents of the report, and therefore I cannot speculate. But when you look at the terms of reference, there was one term of reference that is very key to me, the one of what we call ethnic antagonism and competition, the first term of reference. Kenya is an ethnically divided society politically. And the way the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was crafted, it appears to have ignored that reality. And therefore, we need to change, to redesign the Constitution to fit an ethnically divided society. I say that because when you do a survey of other countries that have this problem, there is a way they recast or they design their constitution. Take, for instance, a place like Northern Ireland. It is divided as between Protestants and Catholics. A place like, let's say, Lebanon. A place like Fiji. Several other places, by the way. The way they design their constitution is not the way other what we call homogeneous societies design their constitution. So the crafters, the draft of this constitution were not imaginative. And there are two forms of democracies. We have what we call a majoritarian democracy, and we have what we call a consensus democracy. In a country that is ethnically divided, it makes sense for you to build a consensus democracy, which addresses several problems in such kind of a society. One being exclusion of groups, where they feel we are not part of the center. In 2013, there was some violence. 2017, there was some violence. When you look at the entire reason that has been fueling that, is the issue of some communities feeling they are being excluded from the center. We had thought two things would address that issue. One, there was the idea of devolution. But when you look at devolution, which communities have been benefiting from devolution? It is the small communities, the people in Turkana, the people in Northeastern, when you look at the allocation per capita. So meaning, the big groups, which Senator, appears to be the one who has,
They might be getting a higher allocation of up to 11 billion shillings, and Murang'a getting about 6 billion shillings, but the level of development still favor Murang'a County. If you look at the equality, you don't see it. The Turkana County remains marginalized.
The point is, what you are raising a completely separate issue. I do not want us to start discussing whether the allocation in Turkana is justifiable or not. I am talking of devolution as a tool to address ethnic fights at the center. Because the idea, or the people are arguing, okay, give us money, we shall stop now fighting for the center. But only to realize, even if you devolve funds, the big tribes, which happens are the ones who fight for the center, they feel, no, we are not getting adequate money. There is still a lot of money that is being retained at the center, and therefore our push for the center is still legitimate. So therefore, devolution did not aid us in ensuring we have peaceful presidential elections. The other idea we had thought would cure this problem was the idea of what we call national building mechanisms. Here I'm referring to a set of rules which appear in our constitution, which are aimed as cohering one nation. One may be, let's say, what we call common language policy, Article 7 and Article 6 of the constitution. We are still a multi-nation society. So what do you do in such a situation? Establish what we call a constitutional democracy, a consensus democracy, where every community feels is part of the center. And for me, if BBI is going to provide for that, so that we have a peaceful society going forward, so be it. There was also another attempt by Article 138 sub Article 4 of the Constitution, which provides that for you to become a president, you must get at least 50% plus one vote, and also 25% of at least half of the counties. The idea of the drafters of that clause was that you must get what we call cross-ethnic support for you to become president. But evidence for the last two elections has shown 2 or 3 communities are capable to get that threshold. So what the effect has been to create 2 major multi-ethnic voting blocks, which they are very strong and almost equal. The effect will be...
So in your view, even as you anticipate the report, what would be the cure to the challenges that you have highlighted?
One, we can form what we call a cabinet that is fairly enlarged, so that you include as many communities as possible at the top. That is one possibility. The other possibility is to expand the executive. I agree with that idea, so that you ensure what we call politically relevant ethnic groups are represented at the top. But of course, the best case scenario would have been if I were to be asked, but I doubt whether that will appear in the report. We increase the winning threshold from 50% +1 to about 60%. I say that because 2002 there was no violence. Why? Because Kibaki had won with almost 60%. 2005 government lost a referendum. There was no violence and the government conceded the defeat. Why? Because the North had almost 60%. 2010 referendum, again, there was no violence because also the winning entity had almost 60%. So for me, when I do a historical analysis of our voting pattern, it appears for you to win, you need to win convincingly. Otherwise, if you win with about 50, 51%, the other group will say this election was rigged, notwithstanding how competently that election was held. That is my view, but I doubt whether it will appear that.
All right. Honorable Wanyonyi, what he says would pass as how some of the politicians feel, but some of the Kenyans feel that what is of urgent need now is not really an expanded executive or representation of the communities at the top, and they feel that the challenges they face are more important. Do these solutions that he's proposing, and as we wait for the BBI report, is it going to resolve the real issue that Mwananchi is facing, that is of job losses, not very healthy economy, and they're having to struggle with putting food on the table?
I think what Senator Kangata is proposing is viable because, one, for a country to grow, you must have stability. You must have trust. The citizens must be confident with the leadership that is in place. But when there's suspicion, when there's tension, when people are actually not trusting each other, then we cannot develop. Because some things, anything happens, whatever the government does, sometimes people just treat it with suspicion. And they always believe that whoever is in leadership is there because maybe like he rigged himself or he got it because of some other factors. But we would like to see the people owning that kind of the leadership, that the president is our president across the board. Whether you are in Turkana, whether you are in El Molo, whether you are in whatever part of the country, you'll feel that the president who has been elected is our president and is the one who is sitting in as a factor of unity. So that we look at it from all corners and see that the president of Kenya is not going to be elected by only a few groups, and some large communities can come up and frustrate or marginalize smaller communities. You realize when President Moi was in power, he actually avoided big communities and united smaller communities and ruled the Kenya for a very long time. The communities such as Kikuyus from Mount Kenya region and the Luos from Nyanza were virtually absent in Moi's government. Although Moi played some tactical politics, when you could just handpick some people from these communities and make them look like they have a representation in the government. But essentially, these communities were actually absent in government. So those are some of the scenarios that we don't want to see happening, that when a winner is the winner take it all. And works like what used to happen in America called a spoil system, that you walk in and you walk in with your men and the rest have to be locked out until the next election. That cannot work for us because it will actually marginalize many regions in Kenya, and many communities in Kenya will feel isolated, and then that tension will keep on building even after the election.
All right. I want us to listen to what the Deputy President William Ruto had to say. I understand that yesterday he was in Thika, Kiambu County, and he spoke about the BBI question. Let's just listen in.
Simuliona Uhuru aniapishwa. Baada ya Uhuru mimi pia nikaambiwa nikuje hapo niapishwe. Na mimi niliambiwa kazi yangu ni kusaidia Uhuru Kangata kusukuma mambo ya maendeleo. Sasa ya barabara, ya maji hiyo nimesema, ya stima, ya kusomesha watoto wenu, hiyo ndio kazi mimi najua. Hii nyingine hii ya BBI. Hii hiyo tumesema tunangojea report. Si namna hiyo? Na rais ametuambia kila mtu atapatiwa kopi asome. Alafu ukishasoma utajiamulia. Na huyo jamaa mwingine ametuambia ati iko tsunami. Sasa huyo mtu ya tsunami ndio tunamwambia sisi hatuna haja na tsunami. Wewe kama ni mtu ya tsunami, sisi tumeambiwa na rais tunangoja tusome. Rais hajatuambia tungoje tsunami. Ama ni aje? Si namna hiyo? Si tutasoma. Kama iko maneno yetu ndani, si tutapitisha. Kama iko kombo si tutanyorosha. Ama ni aje? Tuko pamoja.
Well, I don't know how much you take from that, but of course you'd listen to what the Deputy President is saying and also what he is not saying. But obviously we know what your position has been, Rigathi Gachagua, and you've been very close to the Deputy President. What is the strategy now?
One, I was at that meeting myself, and what the Deputy President is saying is that wherever we went, people were asking his stand on the BBI. They were demanding, what is your stand on BBI? Give us direction. And he says, no. The President has told us to wait for a report, to read, interrogate, digest, build consensus, which is the right thing to do. And, you know, there has been 2 BBIs.
What do you mean?
The one of the tsunami, the one that was discussed in Kibra, this thing will sweep you to the sea, you must pass it, if you don't, you'll be swept by the wayside. And the one of Uhuru Kenyatta, our leader, the one of reading, digesting, and discussing.
Okay.
The one of Uhuru Kenyatta is the one that we know, is the one we want. Let it come tomorrow. And I have been very clear in my mind. The President said, it is even quoted here, only a fool will say there are no issues in this country that requires addressing. He's on point. There are very many issues in this country. We, the people of the mountain, are saying the issues that are of concern to us are not political, they are not constitutional, they are economic. So if this BBI is meant to address issues, you cannot just tell us they will be constitutional or political. We are saying let all issues be addressed. And I want to say what my friend here, the senator, has said, that this BBI will address electoral violence. I don't believe it. Let me tell you something. Electoral violence has not been brought about because of the election outcome. You know, this is democracy, and you cannot redefine democracy. Democracy says the majority will have their way, the minority will have their say. Electoral violence in this country has been brought about by failure, by refusal to accept election results. And Senator Kangata says that in 2002, there was no violence because of the margin. Far from it. It was because of the candidate, Uhuru Kenyatta. I was his personal assistant. There were people who were pushing that we reject those results. And he said, no, the people of Kenya have decided. We were in State House.
But he raises an important point.
We were at State House. We were in State House. And people were breathing fire. We cannot accept these results. Uhuru Kenyatta says, no, the people of Kenya have spoken decisively. We must accept. We did a conceding speech. We went to Serena. He read it. There was no chaos in this country because he accepted defeat. 2005, when Mwai Kibaki and government lost the referendum, he called a live press conference and said the people of Kenya have spoken. We accept and move on. There was no violence. Let me tell you, even if you create how many positions, as long as there will be leaders who will not accept election results, people will go to the streets. So if this BBI, in my view, must have a chapter with sanctions and very heavy penalties for leaders who refuse to accept results outside the constitutional remedies that are provided in the Constitution by going to court and all that. If that is not addressed, I can tell you, even if you create 5 positions, there are 42 communities in Kenya. You cannot put each and every community. So this will not solve the problem.
Okay.
The problem will be change of attitude. It will be people accepting democracy the way Uhuru Kenyatta did in 2002. And he provided leadership. And I can tell you some, because I was seated there, there were guys who could not accept that Kanu had lost and were prepared for anything. And he said, no, I was a candidate, I'm satisfied. Keep off. We are conceding defeat. The country was quiet. So that to me is the issue.
All right. And of course, we resume the conversation after this short break. We'll also be listening to what some other leaders have been saying, and as far as this conversation is concerned, as the BBI report is expected tomorrow. Back in a moment.
Unajua hiyo document chairman ya BBI ni mwanasiasa. Vice chairman ya BBI ni mwanasiasa. Committee yote ni wanasiasa. The document itself ni ya siasa. It is meant to solve political problems. So hiyo ni chakula yetu kama wanasiasa. Tutaleta, tukule, tuone kama tutameza ama tuteme kama wanasiasa.
So that is Johana Ngeno. He's the Member of Parliament for Emurua Dikir, and he sort of draws what a few Kenyans believe is just a political agenda. Do you think he's right in what he's saying, that this is all about politicians and politics?
Yeah, it is true to that extent. But before I answer that, allow me to answer the question that you raised, which was very pertinent. Why is it that we are concentrated on political issues? Why is it that you cannot just address the economic issues and then we move on? I can tell you in 2002, between 2002 and 2007, this country was cruising at about, on average, 7% GDP growth. And notwithstanding that, Kibaki is the only president where people wanted to eject him from his position violently. That tells you that, as Kwame Nkrumah used to say, seek ye first the political kingdom and everything shall be added upon thee. There is some truism in that maxim. So therefore, if you ignore political issues, if you ignore the idea of inclusivity and such issues, I can tell you can never go far. Now, we were discussing offset, the issue, what is the solution to this problem of every time we have cyclic violence after elections? For me, I think the issue of the margin between number 1 and number 2 matters. Every time, if let's say for instance I'm vying to become an MC or even a governor, if the margin between me and my second point, if it is small, that person will resort either to violence or going to court. But if it is a huge margin, there is always a probability of contentment of the other party. So for me, so long as the margin between number 1 and number 2 in presidential elections will be small, that will always give some justification to some people to say that process was
But how do you reduce how do you reduce that margin? It's Kenyans who are voting.
Exactly. It is true. The point would be either include as many communities as possible to your coalition, come up with electoral rules which compel people, for instance, to form larger coalitions together. Alternatively, by the way, you need to become more imaginative. In some societies like, let's say, Ireland or even some states in America, they have come up with a system that is called ranked choice voting, where you don't just vote for one candidate. You are compelled by law to vote for at least 3 candidates. You rank the best one, number 2, number 3. That way, you compel candidates to go and to seek votes in their enemies.
All right.
The point I'm trying to argue is, we must agree as a country we have a problem. This is an ethnically divided society. We are not so sure that problem will go away when, of course, some people have been saying the more we become educated, maybe that problem is going to be addressed by time, a fluctuation of time. But so far,
but most of those politicians who divided the educated ones. So.
We have remained, exactly. So we must recraft the constitution to address Kenyan society as it is, not as it ought to be.
All right, Tim Wanyonyi, Senator here sounds to favor a review of the current law that we have, that is the constitution. Obviously, if you are to expand the executive, if you are to create, to widen the executive in as far as the cabinet is concerned, you'd have to review the law. And some of those things would require a referendum. We had yesterday the majority leader of the National Assembly, Aden Duale, saying that you don't have a referendum law. Is that the correct assessment, or really, if you're to review the constitution, amend some of the provisions, you have to first pass a referendum law? Is that correct?
Yeah, we need referendum law, because we have gone to 2 referendums, but we didn't have a substantive law that deals with referendum. But there's the election laws. The election laws, the other laws that can deal with that. If the referendum is called today, it will still be done, but later, I think we should come up with a legislation that will deal with issues of referendum. There are other issues, even the constitution. Like, for example, we have this thing called citizen participation. It's all over, the constitution is all over everything we are doing, but still we don't have a legislation addressing that. Although there's a bill which is coming up in Parliament that will have to deal with the issues of citizen participation. But notwithstanding, without even that substantive law, those issues still have been addressed, because they are already addressed in the constitution. Right. So there must be, you could find a way of how do you involve the citizens in decision making. How do we deal with a referendum which we don't have a legislation today? We have election laws that can still deal with that. And as you see, when this thing comes, it has to go to the IEBC. IEBC now will deal with it. We'll look at the issues. Do they meet the threshold? Then before they make a reference of that petition to the county assemblies or to the National Assembly, so that they can be discussed to the people, so that they make a decision of that report that has come to IEBC. So we can still deal with it even without a standing legislation.
All right. Yeah. And even as you respond to that, Honorable Gachagua, as you end up, so there is all that division in the political class, and so the day is coming. It is going to be tomorrow, and probably you'll be invited to appear at the Bomas of Kenya. How do we take the conversation forward after that report?
Sam, the BBI and the handshake was supposed to bring Kenya together. The way it is looking, it's causing more division, so it defeats the purpose for which it was envisaged. When you talk about a referendum, Sam, I'm very worried myself for my friend and brother and my party leader, Irungu Kangata. If this country is to go to referendum, what will happen to President Kenyatta's legacy? There will be nothing to talk about, because the country will be divided. It will go to something different. We forget about the big 4. My take is that if this report, for whatever it is worth, recommends a referendum, I would want to see a situation where we do the referendum together with the general election, where we introduce the 7th ballot paper, ballot box, we do it together, so that we allow the president leader to deliver on his legacy. And we also, take time to deliver on the big 4. I'm so worried nowadays. For the last 2 months, nobody talks about the big 4. People talk about BBI and handshake. Those were never our agenda. The Jubilee transformative agenda was about the big 4, But they say for the success to come, you have to fix some of these challenges that the country faces. You fix all these things together. As we wait for the BBI, we must put food on the table. Right. Let's focus on the BBI and handshake and all that maneno. At the same time, let's not lose focus on the big 4. Let's continue. We go with. We be multitasked. We continue on the big 4. But for heaven's sake, suppliers have not been paid. People are dying of cancer. Are we going to look for another 20 billion and go for a referendum when we cannot pay people? If you look at today's newspaper from page 34 all the way to page 40, 7 pages, is auctions. These are our people, and most of them are those that the government has not been able to pay. People who supplied things, people who did contracts, and their properties are being auctioned. And you are telling us that so that people do not go to the streets after elections, we take 20-30 billion. Instead of paying these people, we go for a referendum. All right. Do we have the money? The Treasury is struggling to make ends meet. So I'm saying, let's wait for the report, the way the president has said. Of course, it's not the tsunami one. That one we are not interested. The one of threatening people, that kind of thing, we are not into it. Let's wait the way the president has said. Let us have a national conversation, and let nobody try to force us or put it down our throats. We are past that age of being forced to do things. Once we look at it, my own take is that if there will be things that require a referendum. Let it be put together with the general election so that, one, we save money. Number two, we don't divert the president's agenda and go to referendum, because if we go to a referendum, there will be no time to implement the president's agenda.
Okay. All right. And of course, just to highlight as we exit from this conversation, the 9-point agenda that the BBI task force was to focus on was first, ethnic antagonism and competition, lack of national ethos, inclusivity, devolution, divisive elections, safety and security, corruption, shared prosperity and responsibility and rights. And these are the 9 issues that the report will be being expected to be addressing. We'll wait for it, and as soon as we find it, we'll weigh it against this 9-point agenda and see how well it addresses that. But first, we take a look at the feedback that we've been sending to us in as far as SMSs to 2422. Mutembei Nikaone from Meru, you said that the best things that should be in the BBI is issues to reduce unnecessary expenditure. For instance, eliminate nominated legislators, reduce double jobs in county and central government, issues that will promote the Kenyan farmer, tea, coffee, sugar, cotton, etc., issue to promote economy and peace. That is Tembe from Meru. John Ndamunya from Mwingi East, you said that Kenyans always follow their political leaders blindly. On BBI, most of them are waiting for their MPs, governors, senators, or party leaders to support or reject the BBI to follow them. And also taking a look at the tweets at Citizen TV Kenya, Sam Gichuku, the hashtag being Debrek, you say, Kosgei Rayan, you say, I actually do not know what BBI holds for this nation, but I think it's just right for leaders to let the report come forth and be read by us, the common Mwananchi, in order for a decision to be made concerning the report. Hashtag Daybreak. Omwando Vikri, you said that small countries are built by individuals. In time, it is time we accepted the fact that the current system isn't viable. Inclusion, spirited fight against corruption, sustained unity that the BBI proposes will go a long way in addressing problems of our civilization. Hashtag is Debrek. Sir Rawlings, you said that what is being proposed in the so-called BBI report, notably inclusivity is enshrined in the Constitution, but the appointing authority has failed to take note. Why not push this through Parliament, an arm that has a mandate of oversight? Fair question. Olum Justice, you said that JP is fallen. JP, I bet is a Jubilee Party. The writing is on the wall. I wonder whether the very desirable ethos and unity will be achieved by BBI. The BBI is laying foundation for 2 serious political outfits before 21. A change is inevitable. It is a tussle of political heavyweights. Time will tell. Engineer Lazaro, you said that the authors of BBI should make sure the report includes what's affecting us, like unhealthy economy, how to tackle cancer of corruption. Those are the most concerns of ordinary Mwananchi. Hashtag Debrek. I don't know whether they have time to go back to the report now that they said it has been ready since October 23rd. Shonko Andrew, I really do not believe that a report will provide jobs for Kenyans or reduce the quench to keep borrowing. Economic problems need economic approach to solve them. Pockets are dry. Work on agriculture and manufacturing and everything will go well. You continue to say that the other question is, if the BBI report will recommend a referendum, does Kenya have enough muscle to do a referendum with the current economic state? Are we channeling our money in the wrong priorities? And that's our time. Thank you so much for your feedback, and thank you, Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua from Mathira constituency, Tim Wanyonyi from Westlands constituency in Nairobi, and Senator Irungu Kangata from Murang'a County. Thank you for making time for us.